Is it working? Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the stream. So today we're going to be working on the combat log again. I think I'm starting to get a handle on how I want the combat log to be presented. So in today's stream, I'm not going to be working on any of the visuals. So it's going to be very ugly, but I just want to get the flow generally working for it. Getting the flow working for it, getting all the data propagating throughout all the different parts of the combat log that I want to show. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. So before I get into it, I want to remind everyone that Alka Mortis is available for wishlisting. The playtest is now over, so you can actually still play it in your library if you signed up for it. It's just new signups have been disallowed. And I don't know how long the game is going to be playable in your library for, maybe just a little bit longer. But no new signups are going to be accepted right now, at least until the next playtest. But you can still add it to your wish list if you're interested in it. You can also support the game on Patreon. If you subscribe to the top tier here for at least 1 month, I will send you a key for the full game when it releases, and your name will be included in the in-game Alka Mortis credits. So if that sounds interesting, definitely consider that. You can also purchase my Udemy courses. These will teach you how to build complete games in the Godot engine, so I'd appreciate if you took a look at those. And I think that's it. All right. Hello, Clickertail, welcome. Sorry I missed yesterday's stream. I was finishing my game for the game jam that ended yesterday. No worries. Welcome back. Hello, Snupbill with the message Yummers. Welcome back. Good to see you. Yummers. All of those Yummers. Okay. So I started creating a combat summary here. I'm going to get lost in this, I'm sure. So again, this is going to be a little bit ugly, but I was stubbing this out last night. So basically, the new combat log will have this. So it's like the combat overview. This is like a detailed view that you can bring up. So it'll have both the boards side by side here with a breakdown of the damage dealt by enemy and by... So this would be damage, this will be statuses applied, and this will be healing. And then these will just be relative to each other. So whichever one did the most damage will be the full bar, and then the other bar will be expressed as, you know, a percentage of that bar. So the player is probably always going to be higher. But anyway, this is just going to be a nice like way of seeing like the overview numbers. The idea is that if you click the next button, this, what is it? This screen will pop up. And this is like the individual card items. So there will be like a table which lists all of your cards or all the enemy cards. Like this will be a filterable view, I think. And then you'll have damage dealt, status applied. So you be able to see the per card breakdown. And then each of those rows, the idea is to make those clickable, and that will bring up the specific per card data. So hopefully that is enough information. It's not going to be as granular as listing absolutely everything that happens, but I think with the per card stuff, I think it's going to be possible to show at least like a timeline for just that card that you have selected. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but the big thing I need to do is actually get this functional, because these are all just like dummy scenes. They're not very well organized or anything like that. So yeah, that's going to be the plan, is get all these scenes built out, get the data flowing through the system properly, get the flow working. And then from there, I can evaluate like how I will actually want to present this, like from an artistic standpoint. But yeah, I think that's the plan. Hello, RN Genesis, welcome back. All right, so let's just start here, I guess. I'm probably gonna have to strip out all this code that I already wrote. Because I didn't like the initial... Yeah, I didn't like the initial approach that I was taking here. So, yeah, I think what I'll do is... Yeah, I don't think I want any of this anymore, so I'm just going to delete this stuff. Actually, this was called, yeah, overview container, player card overview item placeholder. We're going to delete this. We're going to delete these. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to basically... get rid of this. Get rid of that. Okay, we'll keep that stuff around for now. Load report. We got this combat stats report. Create overview ranking. I may want to keep that. Show report for card. Let's just get rid of this. Get rid of that. On card mouse clicked, get rid of this. So I probably don't... Yeah, I probably actually don't want this mouse clicked signal anymore. I'm just going to remove that because I added that specifically for this view. But now I just don't want to include that because I didn't thoroughly test it and I don't want to leave it around in case I happen to want to hook into it later on. So I don't like to leave signals hanging around if I'm not using them because the risk of having just a signal hanging around that's not being used is that maybe it becomes out of date or it stops working in the way that you would expect it to work. And then you connect to it, you know, from some scene 3 months after you made the signal, and maybe that signal doesn't do what you thought it did, right? So I always like to keep my signals pruned. My signals should always be connected to at least one place. So they've got kind of like a defined function or defined role, defined order of operations, I guess. And then that makes it safer to like keep building on that signal. But if you've got a signal that hasn't been doing anything for months, I think that's kind of a risky situation to be in. Anyway, create overview ranking. I don't know. I'm obviously not going to want to do this. What is this overview ranking? Card overview item.config. Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to go away, unfortunately. I'm going to probably just redo all this stuff. So we'll get rid of that. Yeah. What was the, let's see. I think I deleted this. So let's delete this. Okay. Hello, Rin. Welcome back. Good to see you. I am doing well. How are you doing? Okay. So let's get a breakdown first of what we need to do here. So this overall summary, I'm going to need to break this up. Trying to figure out what the best way of doing this is. I mean, these rows are all the same, so these probably need to be separate scenes as well. And I don't know what to do about these bars either. I may just make these texture progress bars. So let's do this. Let's get rid of this one, get rid of that one. We're going to save this as overall summary row. Let's save this branch as a scene. Excuse me. Let's see. Overall summary row. We'll just slap that in there. I'm going to have to do some massive organizational work on this, but that's okay. Okay, so player label. This one becomes enemy label. And then this is player value label. Metric type label, I guess we'll call that. And this would be enemy value label. Okay. And then this one, this can be progress bar container. Let's do a new maybe we'll just do a progress bar. I wonder if that will work. Oops. Let's just hide those for now. I think these need to be okay. That stretches properly when it's in the scene that owns all of it, so that's okay. All right, let's just start with this one. So we obviously want min value, max value, 0 to 1, so it can be expressed as a percent. We want to not show the percentage. Theme overrides. The background is going to be a style box empty. The fill, style box flat. And we're going to make this, let's see. First of all, let's set this to 0.5 or something. Or no. So there's our value. We'll set this layout custom minimum size in the Y to maybe 3 is okay. Okay. So player progress bar. And then enemy progress bar. Okay. So there we go. That will probably work. Okay, now we need to mark all these as unique names. Create that script. So if the player label, just grab all these. To be enemy value label. I think I called it what? Private label, metric type label, and then private progress bar, player progress bar, and then private progress bar. I think that's right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to probably want some kind of configure method, which is going to take some kind of object. That object is going to need to be processed somewhere, probably in this load report. So let's go. So we've got the overall summary row. We've got this overall summary. Probably going to want a script for this one as well. Okay. For this one, we're going to want 3 summary rows. So this would be damage summary row, status summary row, and heal summary row. And those are going to need to change slightly. Well, what I'll probably do is I'll probably end up doing an export enum here. Let's do a private enum row type. And we'll do damage, status, and heal. Okay, private row type, row type. That's probably what we'll do. And we can grab all of those. So private overall summary row, damage, summary row, private overall summary row, status summary row, and then it says heal summary row. Okay. And again, we're probably going to want some kind of configure method to do set up all the rows. Okay, let's build this. You're doing all right? All right, that's good. Hello, Iron Eye Gaming. Have you ever used the binary space partition for dungeon generation before? Yes, I have. When Gunforged was originally going to be like a procedurally generated dungeon kind of exploration game, I did binary space partitioning for a little while. And I wasn't, I mean, it's not like I'm an expert in like procedural generation algorithms, but I was never able to get that to work very well. Like that it just doesn't generate very interesting dungeons. They just feel very samey and very methodical and very uninteresting. But I have done that. It's relatively easy to implement. Hello, Kzori, welcome. How much RAM does your game consume in space? It's a 100 gigabyte download, and you need at least 32 gigabytes of RAM. So status, heal. Okay, so I set all those up. I'm kidding, by the way. It's not, no. I think Alcamortis takes like 100 megabytes of RAM. I mean, we could just load a debug version and see how much it takes. I think it's like 200 something megabytes on disk, so that's the storage space. And then in terms of RAM, let's see. How am I going to identify which one this is? So on a debug build, it's taking 608. I think that's the one. Let's see. Is there a way to identify which one's actually using GPU? Can I view GPU in here? Oh yeah, here we go. I'm assuming it's this one that's using more GPU right now. So the debug build is taking 608 megabytes of RAM. I think that's probably closer to 200 in release. I haven't really checked it, but yeah, it's a relatively small amount of RAM. And then on disk, like I said, I think it's like 250 or 300 megabytes, something like that. I don't remember exactly what the size is on disk, but it's it's well under a gigabyte for both, right? So like RAM is like a quarter to a half of a gigabyte, and then storage is the same. So it's not random enough to you. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with a lot of procedural generation algorithms is like the ones that are easy and straightforward to implement are also the most boring ones. So it's one of those things where it wasn't that compelling. Now, maybe I just didn't do it right, but I think that if you're going to do procedural generation, I think it's almost more beneficial to like, instead of trying to generate an interesting dungeon, what a lot of games do is they just generate interesting rooms, right? So like Binding of Isaac, right, doesn't really have dungeons per se. It just has a bunch of different room shapes that it connects to each other. And then you just navigate to the rooms directly. There's no corridors or anything, right? And then something like Tiny Rogues, which is one of my favorite roguelike games, it literally just has square or rectangular rooms. And every time you complete a room, you have a choice between like two rooms that you want to go forward to next, right? And the room will have some kind of bonus, like this room might have health or this room might have items or whatever. I find that that's probably more interesting of an approach to procedural generation, because you're just basically cutting off all the excess and you're just getting the player to the meaningful decision right away. So unless you can actually make the dungeon exploration interesting in and of itself, I don't think that doing a procedural dungeon is really all that great. At least that's what I found. Like in Gunforged, the problem I had with the dungeons is not only were they not super fun to navigate, but there was no reason to navigate them, right? It was just filler content, like just walking simulator. Oh, I finished this room, now I have to walk through a corridor to go to this room. And of course you could try to solve that, right? You could fill the corridors with interesting things, or you could try to turn it into like a little mini Metroidvania-like, where like, you know, one path is blocked until you get the key from this side, and then maybe when you pick up the key, something happens, like a boss spawns in the corridor or something like that. Like, I think there's things you can do to make that appealing, but I think the more streamlined and straightforward way to do it is just to like, if you're going to have rooms, just like make those room decisions very easy for the player and just cut down on all the walking they have to do, if there's no reason for them to be doing that. But what is the button that appears in the bottom middle over the map? That's the recenter map button. But yeah, I can close this and see which one closes. Yeah, so that was the running one. For me, the debug has 150 megabytes for a level maker game. Hello, JC Diz. New sub. I'm currently making a game right now. Godot is fun as my first engine, but the whole directing the story coding and testing the game was really tough. Yeah, game development is hard. It's really hard. Definitely, like in terms of like products, like software products, I guess, that I've worked on, because I used to be a software engineer, like this game is definitely the hardest one. Like games in general are much harder than anything that I've done professionally, working on like SaaS apps and whatnot. I don't know why that is exactly. I think part of the thing is like you encounter tougher algorithms and more math in games than you ever will in like SaaS app development, you know? So you're getting constant exposure to like new algorithms, interesting problems that aren't really like, how do I want to say this? You will encounter problems that are specific to your game that may not have an obvious answer that's easy to look up on the internet, right? That's part of it. The other part of it is just like the amorphous kind of stuff. One of the benefits of making just a straight up software product is like you just have requirements, right? It's like we have this feature that we want to add to this app because customers are requesting it. So we just need to plan like the technical implementation. And once we've met the feature requirements, it's done, right? That feature is done. We send it out to the customers and they're happy with it. Or maybe we tweak it a little bit. But with game development, it's like you're trying to gauge whether your game is fun. And that ends up being a confluence of factors, right? It's Like the visual presentation plays a role in the fun. The gameplay loop, of course, plays a role in the fun. The fantasy plays a role in the fun. The story plays a role in the fun. And if any one of those things are off, it may not be easy to diagnose that, right? So yeah, it's definitely hard. Good morning, Moneybags. Oh wait, am I still doing code reviews? Not at the moment. I want to continue doing that when Alchemortis gets closer to release or when it is released. Right now, I'm just kind of like almost 100% of my effort is going into Alchemortis. I did my first game jam and a big mistake. I forgot to add the splash art to the icon banner in my game itself, so it was just the name of the game. Uh-oh. Yeah, these are the kinds of things you learn with game jams for sure. Still placed like 1,400 out of 1,800 submissions, so not terrible for my first time. No, I don't think that's terrible. I mean, I would say for your first time doing a game jam, finishing a game at all is a great accomplishment, because like even just getting a game to a finished state where it's playable in that short amount of time is incredibly difficult. So just being able to do that, especially on your first game jam, is definitely an accomplishment, right? Yeah, I remember like the first times that I participated in a game jam, it was so much fun. It was so nerve-wracking because I was like, you know, you misjudge how much time you have, and then you got to scramble to do things. And then there's the constant like worry about, does the uploaded build even work? Does it run? And yeah, but you will nail those kinds of things down the more you participate. I got to the point where when I do game jams, usually my game is complete like 8 hours before the submission deadline, and then I just like kind of take those 8 hours to just tweak things and polish things. And I usually stop finicking with it like 4 hours before the deadline, because I just don't want to introduce any risk that close to the deadline. But those first couple of times you go like right up to the wire, right? You go right up to the line. Anyway, okay, so we've got the overview summary. So the whole thing is I need to create a script here. So basically, I'm going to need to create some kind of object that formats all the data that I need that will then propagate this. Is that what I want? No, overall summary. I'm going to need to rename all these things too. This is not going to be easy for me to figure out what's what. But we're going to want some kind of public void configure again. And then we're going to want to pass in propagate data through controls. So in here, we would do like overall, actually I could just call this overall summary.configure. Okay, so there's our overview summary. It has a script, and now we've got the combat summary. Okay, so we've got the overview summary. So let's get a reference to that. Alrighty. So let's take a look at what I actually need here. Why does this keep opening things? I don't want you to open things. Maybe building it will fix that. Hello, Ned Stark. Ned Stark's neck. Welcome. Good to see you. You have a website for game project review submission. If you look at one of the review videos that I've done, there should be a Google form link in like the video comment, pinned comment or description. Watching pro game jammers is an amazing way to humble yourself. I do have a number of like I wouldn't necessarily call myself a pro game jammer, but I have a number of game jam devlogs on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in those, you can check them out. Happy with myself for completing at least. I did literally everything but the sounds in the game was from a free site, but everything else was me, so can't complain too much. Yeah, that's great. Hello, Emerson. Welcome back. So we need essentially an enemy So I'm going to need to create an overall breakdown. So we have this combat report. We've got player and enemy. So what I'm going to want to do, I think, I've got this load report. Let's do this. I wonder if I should create like a utility. I might just create like a combat log utility folder in here. And we're going to create new file. Let's do combat report utils. And we're going to do public static class combat report utils. And then in here, we're probably going to want some other classes. So public class. Let's do overall report. Okay. And we'll do public overall report, public static overall report. Create overall report. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll move this. Okay. So we create the overall report. This will just return new overall report for now. Okay, so let's get that all wired up. So overview summary.configure, and we're going to do combat report utils dot create overall report from the given report. We'll do overall report. We'll pass that overall report in here. We've got these summary rows. So what I'll do is I'll do overall report here. And then what I'm going to do is let's do let's do an overall report row. Here we'll do public. Oh, you know what I might need to do? No, that's fine. Overall report row. Actually, let's rename this to item. We're probably just going to do something like public overall report item, player damage report item, enemy damage report item, overall report item, player status report item. I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but I can clean it up later. Actually, let's not do this. Let's just do 3 of these. So this will be damage report item. This will be status report item. And this will be heal report item. Okay, and then in the report item, we're going to do something like public float player relative percent enemy relative percent public int player player value public int enemy value. These may actually be able to be inferred from here. So this would be actually, we're going to do, this would be player value divided by mathf.max of player value, enemy value. Of course, we're going to need to gate this by 0. So player value is equal to 0. We'll just do 0. Otherwise, we'll do player value divided by this. So this should always return a non-zero value. If the player value is non-zero, that means that this will always return a non-zero value. So it doesn't matter if the enemy value is 0 here. Yeah. And then we want this to be a float. Okay. And then if we do enemy relative percent, we'll do if enemy value will return 0. Otherwise, we'll do enemy value divided by float mathf.max. Okay. Okay, so we've got the overall report here. This is the overall summary. So what we will do is this overall summary row, we will configure with an overall report item. And then we'll just have to consume that. But what we'll do is we need to create the overall report. Actually, that's what I'm doing here, right? Yeah. So what we will do here is we'll just do damage summary row dot configure with overall report dot damage report item. Status summary row dot configure with status report item. And heal summary row configure with heal report item. Okay. So we need to fill in this create overall report from this combat stats report. We have status stacks applied by type. We have damage taken by type, damage dealt by type, and we have healing done. So we've got everything that we need. So it's just a matter of creating those report items in here. Brackies, you did the all mods. Hello, Rookie Tookie, welcome. What app would you recommend for making sounds for your game? I don't make sounds for my game. I downloaded basically the GDC audio bundles. So my strategy is download the Sonus GDC audio bundles. That's like well over 100 gigabytes of royalty-free sound effects there. And then what I do is I keep an eye on the Humble bundle. Whenever the Humble bundle has like a collection of, 6,000 sound effects or whatever for 20 bucks, I'll just buy those, and I have, like a mass storage device, a NAS that I put everything on. And so I've just been building up my audio library with stuff I know I can use over time, and I've been storing it and backing it up. So at this point, I've got, let's see. This is the app that I use. It's called Asset Hoard. This is what I use for looking at all my sound effects, but you can see I've got 170,000 sound effects in here. So this is how I browse my sound effects, but these are all stored on a drive that I have. So yeah, this is where I get my sounds. I basically just have a local sound library that contains audio files that I know I have the rights to use because I either bought them all or downloaded them from the GDC Sonus bundles. You started 3 days late. Very nice. Hello, Dozy Burrito. Welcome back. Good to see you. Yours was a 7-day jam. How much of the game would you say is complete? Probably like 60%. In terms of the major features, it's like 90% complete. The combat log is one of the last major things that I have to do. And then the remaining efforts is just like tightening up the controller support, finishing up the places that are not yet supported for localization. And then the rest of the game effort after that is basically just going to be content. So creating more artifacts, more items, more characters, more unlock conditions, difficulty modifiers, that kind of stuff. So very close to being in the stage of development where the only thing standing between me and release is basically just content and balancing. So I need to get this combat log done though, because this is like the last major albatross around my neck, whatever that means. Hello, Mel's, welcome. So you need a certain sound, you just find the sound's name and list to a couple of choose, huh? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I do. So I just go in and I'll just click around. Like, for example, let's say I need an explosion sound effect. So I just search explosion. Here's everything that either has explosion in the name or explosion in the path. So this app searches by path. You can also tag things. It's just like, how in the world am I going to go through and tag 170,000 audio files? So it's like, yeah, completely unworkable. But I'll just search in here. And sometimes, you know, some sound effects may not be easily searchable by keyword. And so sometimes I'll just kind of like scroll through the library. I think you could search by size in here too. So if I generally just want to limit it to like short sound effects, right? I can do like less than 100 kilobytes. Did that actually work? But yeah, there's like search parameters here. Some of these, a lot of these aren't really useful. But yeah, that's basically what I do. And then I can just click the play button. I don't know if I should do that because I don't know how loud it's going to be. But yeah, I just do that. And then when I find one I like, I drag it over into my project folder, copy it over to my project folder, and then I can use it. So like in Alka Mortis, I basically just like, I don't organize my audio at all. I just throw all the sound effects that I'm using into a giant like folder here. And I create like a mini library because a lot of these I will reuse the sound effect for different things. But yeah. Can't wait to play the full game. Thank you, Rookie Tookie. Did you also buy Art Bundle and do the same? No, I didn't. I don't use art bundles. No, I prefer to do all my art myself. The problem with like 2D art bundles is that it's really hard to like get a 2D game to look coherent when you're using asset packs. It's a little bit easier for 3D because a model is a model, right? It's either got a polygon count that kind of matches your style or not. And then, you know, you can retexture 3D models to fit your style. That's a lot harder to do in 2D, right? 2D is a lot more stylistic in a lot of cases where you basically would have to use one asset pack that has everything in the same style that you'd want. And I also just have no interest in doing that. Like, the only reason I use sound effects library is because it's way too much effort to try to record my own sound effects. And I don't know if they would be that quality either. So yeah. No sounds coming from the computer. I think the audio is really low, that's why. Have you ever done any game dev with Unity? If so, what do you think of it compared to Godot? I haven't done much development in Unity, no. I think the last time I used Unity was in college, which was sometime prior to 2017. So, yeah, I haven't touched. Oh, so basically, the last time I used Unity was in college, which was 2017. And that was also the time when I started using Godot. And I basically haven't touched any other game engine since I picked up Godot. I'm what you call a Godot evangelist. I'm a high priest. I'm a high cultist. You know, I'm one of those people that will shun you and call you mean names on the internet if you don't join the Godot cult. I'm kidding. I've never done that, but it's kind of funny to say anyway. All right. So I need to create this overall report. So I need to create these new, so let's do this. So var damage report item is equal to new overall report item. Player value is equal to combat stats report dot for side true. Damage dealt by type dot sum x dot value. And then enemy value is equal to combat stats report dot for side false. I don't really like this for side. Let's just do, like, what the heck is even the point of this? Okay, var status report item. This is just barely small enough where I don't feel like I need to genericize this, but if I wanted to be really fancy, what I could do is I could like create a generic selector where I could pass in like a function that gets the value that I want, but I'm not going to do that because I just need to do this. And then var heal report item. And we will do equals combat stats report dot player dot healing. I should probably make this. Do I want to make this like null safe? I don't know if there's ever going to be a situation where you can bring this up where there's no enemy stats, but that's okay. Let's do. Okay, so now we're getting all that overall report stuff. So that calls configure here, that calls configure there. It's setting the individual report items for those rows. Okay. Okay, so now we can focus just on this. On the summary row itself. So this is going to be a pain in the rear because now I got to do all these different label types. UI combat log player dealt. So I got to build all this to be translation capable. Let's do UI combat log summary row player damage. Something like that. UI combat log summary row enemy damage. Okay, then this would be damage. UI combat log summary row just damage. Okay. So then I need to do basically this, but this becomes status instead. Enemy applied. And then heal. Okay, switch row type. Oh, did I do this wrong? Player label is equal to UI combat log summary row player damage dot text enemy label dot text is equal to this enemy damage metric value metric type label dot text is equal to, I think it's just this minus the faction or whatever you want to say. Okay, so we got row type status and then row type heal. And this becomes status here. And this becomes heal here. Okay, then we can do player value label dot text is equal to report item dot player value dot toString. Enemy value label dot text is equal to report item dot enemy value. Okay. And then we do the player progress bar is equal to report item. This needs to be dot value. It's equal to report item dot player relative percent. Enemy progress bar value is equal to report item dot enemy relative percent. Now we do need to change the color of the progress bars as well. But we can just see if that much works, I suppose. So let me just make sure there's nothing happening in here that's going to cause a problem, and then we can test it. No, I think we're okay. Well, time to see if I did all that code correctly. The answer is probably no, but pick the engine you find the most comfortable with and get coding. Yeah, that's true. Oh, this needs to be right. I would like to try out Unity. Hold on. Let me just fix this. Okay, I would like to try out Unity. If only it doesn't take like an entire week to load. Yeah. How Godot loads so fast is amazing to me. What bloat does to a man. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why Unity takes so long. I mean, I guess Unity... Unity has a lot more going on than Godot, I think, generally. But yeah, the difference is pretty wild. One of the best things about Godot is being able to test fast. Unity sometimes randomly just takes several minutes to start the game. Yeah. Extra important in game jams. Yes, it is. Yeah. Unfortunately, using C#, I still have to wait several seconds for this to build. But I wonder why that's the case, because if I run the build from the command line, it doesn't usually take more than like 2 seconds. But it takes much longer in the Godot editor. Like the Godot editor freezes a little bit, which is kind of not fun, but... And even this, like, what is taking so long here? Okay, we have some errors. It looks like I'm not getting references to the player and enemy boards correctly anymore. Oh. Because the boards are in here now. Right. Honestly, probably this needs to move into here. This becomes overall report. Actually, I guess this should just be the combat stats report. And then I'll create that. What did I call it? Combat report utils. Okay. Get rid of this. I think what I need to do here what if I could just do I wonder if I could just do this. That's probably easier. All right, let's build and try again. Maybe less debugging stuff is running when you do it via command line. Yeah, maybe. I mean, the Godot editor does need to update too with like all of your export variables and stuff, so I wonder if that's part of it. I just got to update the editor with all the signals and whatnot. Export variables. I forgot to build the translations, but did I really do 909? Did I really do that? That seems like a fake number. But I need to build the translations. Forgot to do that. Let's see. So all the translations are there now. Well, maybe I did do exactly 9. That looked like a fake number. Anyway, so we can see that we've got you dealt, you applied. Okay, so that's taking up quite a bit of space, but that's all right. So the idea is like this will become nicer. It's obviously kind of hard to read here, but I think, you know, I could fix that. We're not going to focus on the visual presentation necessarily yet. I just want to get all the stats working. So it said the enemy applied more status than I did. That is not right at all. The enemy didn't apply any statuses. Did I do the status wrong? Maybe I did something in here. The enemy should have no statuses applied. Oh, it might be counting... It might be counting necrosis in there, actually. That's probably what's happening. Let me see if this works. Okay. So I bet you if I add God mode, that probably will be 0. Yeah, so I think necrosis is counting as the status that the enemy applied, which is not correct. So I'll have to fix that, but that's okay. All right, so I think that screen is fine for now. I want to move on to doing the per card row and get that all situated. And then once that's all in place and once the flow is working okay, then I can work on the visual presentation. But necrosis is counting as enemy stacks applied. So that's a bug. So we'll just note that. Anyway, so combat log work. I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break, and when I come back, we will do the second part of this, which is I want to do the per card summary. So this is going to be essentially a list of all the items on your board with a breakdown of the damage that that item dealt as well as that item applied. And then you'll be able to click into that to see more specific stats about the item. So the idea is that this will just be kind of like a menu that you can drill down into. So you get the overall summary, you can see the boards, right? You click next, that will show you like a table view of the per card damage dealt and status applied. And then if you click on an item, that will bring up another window, which will show you, I'm thinking about showing like the most notable timeline events. So like when it crit or when it applied like a lot of statuses or whatever, as well as the exact breakdowns by type. But honestly, that may not be they may not be super necessary just as like a MVP for this. I think that just presenting the overall stats very nicely and then also showing a breakdown of what each item is doing. I think it would be useful to be able to see like when this thing crit and how many times it crit. Basically like filter to notable events. Honestly, I may be able to just show the entire timeline for the card so you could see what it was doing. But I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But in any case, we want to implement this screen now. And then I'll have to work on making the visual presentation a little bit better. But I'll be right back in 3 minutes and we will continue on. Alrighty, I'm back. Will the combat log keep logs of old battles? Seems like it could be useful to tell if your items are doing better than previous rounds. Honestly, I don't think so, at least not initially. I think it would be possible, but I'm having enough trouble with this combat log as it is. Like I'm just trying to get to the combat log into the state where it's useful. And I'm gonna have to try and test that out first and see what people think before I start adding a bunch of features to it. So what I'm trying to do now is just like see if this combat log is going to be an improvement over the current combat log. And then if it is, and people say, hey, the combat log is great, but I just want like X, Y, and Z information, then I can think about building on top of it. But yeah, I think it's still like an unknown to me if this is actually going to be more helpful. So we'll have to see. We will have to see. Okay, so we've got these per card summaries. Let's just change this type to control. Just call this one like spacer. Okay, so header grid container. So we got the per card summaries. Okay. So we've got our card summary item. This is loaded as a placeholder. So again, we're going to want a script here. So this would be the damage and the status rich text label. Okay. And this is the item name label. Okay. So game.ui.combat log. Okay. Hello, Ashwin. Welcome back. Good to see you. We'll call this card summary item. Namespace, game.data.combat stats, public class card summary item. Honestly, do I even need to do this? I may not need this actually. Let's delete this one. So we've got the per card. We've already got the card combat stats. So yeah, we've already got all this stuff. So I think I could just do public void configure like so. Damage rich text label. Okay, so item name label, damage rich text label, status rich text label. So let's do private label, item name label. dot text is equal to card combat stats dot card dot localize card definition resource dot localize name. I'm actually not sure if that's going to work. Let me write down this is a bug. So the localized name is not going to work with anything that I set the name of dynamically, like in the Boss Souls case. So I don't think that's going to be good, but that's all right. We'll fix that later. Rich text label, damage. I'm just going to simplify this. Damage label, status label. Okay. So what I want to do now is I basically want to private void create create damage label string. So we're going to do card combat stats dot damage dealt by type, order by descending x dot value. So var ordered is equal to that. We might as well just do a to list on that. Okay, so var string damage string is equal to string.empty. If, let's just do this. If ordered dot count let's do return string.empty. Otherwise, our damage string, we'll set that up. Description utils dot get icon for keyword. So get keyword damage type to keyword string. So for each var entry and ordered, damage type to keyword string. What am I doing? Entry dot key. Can I do this? Oops. Damage type val. So damage type to keyword string. This might be a little bit heavy. I might want to simplify this, but I just need the icon. Description utils dot get icon UID for keyword. I mean, I guess it's just a couple of dictionary lookups, so it's probably okay. I don't think any string manipulation is happening there. So then I can return, no, damage string. Icon. Do I have like a description utils dot wrap? I don't. Well, maybe I need to extend this then. public static string create icon string icon UID. Oops. Return that. We've got the icon UID there. Here we're going to do create icon string icon UID. Oh. Okay. So plus equals description utils dot create icon string icon UID, and then we're going to do val, and then we want to do a space after that, I think. Okay. Damage label dot text is equal to create damage label string. Okay, we can actually simplify this. Create summary label string. Func. No, that's not going to work. It's going to be too difficult to simplify that. So we'll just duplicate this and we'll just change a couple of things. So this is status applied by type. This is status type. This would be status type to keyword string. Okay. Status label dot text is equal to create status label string. Card combat stats. All right. So now we need to go to this per card summaries here. We need to, I'm going to rename this actually. We're going to do card summary table, I guess we'll call it. And then we're going to need to put a script on that. Okay. Hello, Ninja Link. You got the stomach flu? Uh-oh. I had that over the weekend. That's, I guess it's going around. It's not fun. But, yeah. Good to see you, though. I'm definitely going to start naming variables what. Now, you know what's funny about this is that this is actually the example that Godot gives. It literally says that the documentation shows the argument being named what. So I just like followed that pattern. I don't know why that's the case, but it wasn't my convention. Do we need a lockdown in the Fire Rally community? The stomach flu is a virtual virus, I guess. Foo has always been my go-to. Okay. Private instance placeholder. Card summary item placeholder. Okay. So we actually do need this to be ordered. I do need to do some processing on this. But let's just get it working because I want it to be ordered in descending by probably damage or status. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure that out, but that's okay. So this would be card stats. Card summary item placeholder dot create instance as card summary item. Summary item dot configure with card stats. So this is not going to be ordered, which is fine. I can figure that out later. Okay. So here, stop opening. Okay. I need the overview summary. This needs to be renamed to card summary table. Wait a minute. Configure card table is equal to card summary table dot configure with report. Okay. Configure card table dot invoke. So I just delay the configuration of that until we actually click the button. Let's see what happens. Contain this virus that's going around. Happy to see the log getting updated. Just wanted to check, are you planning to include maybe like a splitter between the combat encounters so it's easy to compare different encounters? No, I'm not going to do that initially. I was explaining this a little bit earlier, but yeah, I just want to get the combat log into a state where people think it's more useful. I don't want to spend like an inordinate amount of time on it only for people to say, hey, the combat log isn't really doing anything for me. That looks kind of nice, actually. Once I get some like actual like dividers in here, we can see the skeleton mage applied. So I think one thing is I'm going to probably want this to be hoverable so that you can actually see like what card it's referring to. The alternative thing I could do is I could keep the overall, see, this is the UX part of it. Anyway, I need to make sure that this is initialized correctly. So let me just make sure that's true. Overall overview summary dot visible is equal to true. Card summary table dot visible equal to false. So yeah, I just want to make sure that the combat log is more useful to begin with. And then if people think it's more useful, hopefully I can easily build upon this and add more information to it and also store like a history or something. But I don't want to go overboard and like add all these features only for people to say, I actually don't think this combat log is that useful, right? So probably the overhauled combat log will be in like the next playtest or you know, eventually there's going to be a demo for Alka Mortis that releases, which will become like the new, I mean, I'll probably still do internal playtests for Patreon members or something, but anyway, whatever version will be in your hands will contain like the initial combat log overhaul, and then if you all like it and you say, hey, I just want this extra piece of information in there or whatever, I can build upon that. But I don't want to be in a situation where I spend 2 weeks making this and making it like super full featured, and then everyone says, it's still not that useful, you know? So yeah, just showing up, but this is looking great. Literally exactly what I wanted. Awesome. Didn't know you overhauled it this much. Nice. Yeah. I mean, this is just like, this is very rough too. Like all these visuals need to be updated. It needs to be presented in a very nice way. But so the first page you bring up, it will show you a snapshot of your board and the enemy board. And then it will show you like the relative damages and statuses and healing done as bars here. And then when you click next, it will go into a summary table, which will just show you like in a table how each of your items performed. And of course, there needs to be a way to flip to the enemy side as well on here. But what I'm thinking almost is like, I wonder if this table should be on, like, I wonder if these boards should be visible always. And then the only thing that gets swapped out is like this overall summary, right? So the overall summary goes away and then the table shows up. That may be something that I do. But anyway, let's take a look at this. I hope that this is going to be more useful than just having a whole scrollable list in that tiny little window. This window has now become just a running total of everything that's happening in the combat. I'm going to probably adjust this as well. Somebody had the suggestion of putting the enemy window over here, which I think would be good. The only problem with that, well, I can think about that later, but so you can see that as this goes, like this is updating with your totals, right? So you can see the damage that's happening. You could pause the game and see, okay, the enemy has done 104 damage to me already, which is kind of odd. How is that possible? Oh, it looks like it's reading the wrong values. Oh, I might just be using the same values as the player. Yeah. I don't actually think I'm getting the enemy stats correctly. So never mind. The enemy stats are not working right now, but let me make a note of that. That should be an easy fix. But yeah, so this just becomes a running total now of like everything that's happening in the combat. So you can get like a feel of like what your most powerful source of damage or whatever is. It should track armor applied as well. But yeah, so you can see I applied 3, that's how much damage I dealt, 3,859 fire, and I applied 145 fire stacks. Dealt 98 poison and applied 98 poison stacks. That's basically going to be a 1-to-1 relationship, just how the scaling works. But of course, if you get any like artifacts or anything that change that, those numbers would diverge. It's still not super fun to have to scroll through this. So I was actually thinking about making this window appear like in the middle here. And just like, it just appears, I don't know if that would be great though, because then you won't see the effects going through. Somebody suggested like maybe just make the combat log like come out as a window here and just cover the inventory. I don't know. There's the hardest part of making these pixel games by far is like just you don't have that much screen space, right? You just don't have that much room. Like this text here, this is as small as the text can be, right? Like this is the smallest size that fonts can be. So it's a little bit tricky, but you know, it's one of those things where just treat it as a constraint that has to be worked around, and you know, that'll be okay. Is that heal value correct? It is, okay. 10,003 damage. 10,003. Where is it getting that number from? Oh, it's adding everything up, I think. It might be counting the necrosis in there as well. So I got to break that down. But these stats are divergent from what's shown in here, which is not great. But the status stacks applied sounds right, though. 465, 145, 126. Yeah, I feel like that's just about right. I'm not going to do the exact math, but that seems correct. I think the enemy applied is counting necrosis here, which is not great, but obviously this presentation needs to be improved as well. But then I go here, I can see that my leech applied at 78, bleed, and 26. Why is there a space? There's a big space there. Why is that happening? Anyway. Oh, I can keep clicking next, and that just creates more tables. Very cool. So a lot of visual work to do here and a lot of UX work to do here, but with some little margins and some lines to wrap these things, I think it will look all right. It will look presentable. I may end up doing like a custom frame border for this as well to make it look nicer. These buttons here, this button is just going to be like in its own little section here. See how the button doesn't scroll with everything? So the idea is just put the buttons down here. I might change this into like an icon too, like a little arrow icon instead of just a next button there. So there's a lot of work to do here, but so you can see the Skeleton Warrior did 144. And the idea is if I could click into this and bring up another like floating window on top of this, then I could see maybe a timeline view for that item specifically. But yeah, so now the nice thing too is if I leave combat, I can always go back and see the last combat summary. So I can see it at any point until I engage in a new combat. As soon as I engage in a new combat, that doesn't do anything until I win the game and then win the round, and then I can go back in. Skeleton Commander applied 96 armor. So I don't know, hopefully that's more useful. I think it's already a lot more useful. Okay, good. I like the header and line, easy to maintain. I thought you were trying to make that tiny window better. This is way better indeed. Yeah, the tiny window is just going to become a running total now. I think one improvement I could make is that you can't actually open the combat summary until the combat is finished. But I think it should be possible to make it such that while you're in combat, let's say you've gotten like halfway through the combat, you should be able to click this and see like a current in progress state, right? And it should pause the game or pause the combat when you have it open. So you pause the combat when you have it open, and then you can see like the in progress state of it. So you can kind of like keep track as you go if you want to. Like maybe you see a big spike of damage and so you go, wait a minute, where'd that happen? And you click the combat log and then you look at the table and you see, oh, my Skeleton Commander did a crit for like 60 or whatever, you know? And I do this, yeah. So yeah, I think the remaining issues here is not necessarily, I mean, there's some data issues, but I think the remaining issues are largely just visual and UX issues that I need to think through. But basically got done what I wanted to get done for the combat log, which was like wiring up all this data so that it propagates through this UI here. And now I can actually spend my effort improving how this data is presented. So yeah. Are you removing the per item combat log? Yeah, so the giant timeline view, that's gone. I I could reintroduce the timeline view. I was thinking about just like filtering, like, so let's say that you click into Skeleton Warrior. What would happen is that would present a pruned timeline view for just that item, right? So you'd be able to see Skeleton Warrior executed at 3 seconds and 6 seconds, and then it crit for like 40 here, and it applied fire there. I think that would be more useful. But yeah, like I said, like my main concern is let's make this more useful to understand at a glance what's happening and what your most powerful items are. And then if that is accomplishing that goal, it should be relatively easy to build more granular stats into this view, right? Because I'm still collecting all the timeline data. Like that's still all there. I just need to... yeah, just build on this, I guess. But like I said, I think the first iteration of the combat log overhaul is basically going to be what you see here. And then if people think that's fine, but then they say, I would love to have this piece of information or that piece of information, I can build on top of it, right? So yeah. What do you put the button higher up and then make the box taller? I could. We're getting awfully close to the edges of the screen though. Like there needs to be healthy margins. I suppose I could extend it a little bit, but I also want to do like a dimmer. Let's actually just do the dimmer right now. Combat summary. Oh, this is not... this is not a layer. Dimmer rect. I always forget how this works. I might want to do some reworking here. Okay, anyway. Actually, that would cover the inventory. What if the loot from the combat and log are displayed on the right? That way you have a lot of space. The loot? And the log are displayed on the right. Maybe. Be nice to have a timeline of the combat and a marker of which abilities are being echoed. This looks great. Since we are discussing features for legibility, it would be nice to be able to replay a combat and step through the same way you step through lines of code. Yeah, I think that would be nice. That would be a little bit more complicated because I'd have to figure out a way to like replay the combat in like a sandboxed way so it doesn't affect the rest of the game. That would definitely be quite a lot of effort, I think. It would actually be easier. You know what would be easier to do? Instead of doing that as part of the combat log, it would be easier to do like a step mode just for the combat. So you could put the combat in like step mode, and then you could manually advance by like 0.1 seconds or 0.2 seconds or whatever. So if I go into combat here, it would actually be easier for me to just implement that instead. So you click start combat, or maybe there's another button here like start in step mode or something. So you click like start in step mode and then it goes over here and then you can just like click buttons to advance and see what happens. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of entering scope creep territory there. I think that would probably be like a post-release thing. Because I have to be careful, right? Because like a lot of people are like really enjoying the game despite there not being a whole lot of clarity over what's happening. And so I think I can be tolerant of a certain amount of that lack of clarity to some extent for release. And I can always improve that post-release, right? So I'm really getting to the point in development now where I have to make really careful decisions about what I spend my time on. Which is hard to do because I do want this game to release in a really, really good state. But at the same time, I want the game to release as well. So I kind of have to make judgment calls about like what is the most impactful stuff that needs to be changed between now and release. What do you need to sandbox permanent increases in the abilities? Yeah, stuff like that. Any artifacts that would... So artifacts that trigger off of combat would have to be replayed exactly as well. But if there are any artifacts that gain power based on combat or like, work based off of combat victories and stuff like that, essentially would just all need to be sandboxed. So like none of that is touching your actual artifacts and whatnot. Why can't I just upload the info on the Brain API? The Brain sucks. Good morning, Malicious Rabbit. You pick an item from the pile, tiny square right now, so that log may flow below that naturally as you have more space to work with. That's true. Being able to replay combat would be really nice. Yeah, for sure. Probably leverage the save system instead of sandboxing. I don't know about that. I mean, when I'm creating this combat log, I am creating a snapshot of the items. So this skeleton mage is not this skeleton mage. Like these are totally different references. And I do have a way of applying the snapshotted artifacts as well. And that's another thing I need to do. I need to show the artifacts probably here. The idea is that this needs to be completely isolated from the rest of the game. So I am already kind of snapshotting these things because like if I change my board layout and I want to look at my previous combat, I need to see what the state of that combat was, right? So these are different and I could even sell everything here and like this still exists, right? So I already kind of have sandboxing in place. Oh yeah. Killing It looks great. Love the stream's videos. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate that. Also, keeping track of RNG seems like it'd be a pain for sandboxing. I don't think so, because I think what I would have to do, which would be relatively simple, is I would just have to create a seed for the combat ahead of time, and then just make sure that anything that's RNG related in the combat flows from that seed. And the combat is like purely deterministic, aside from the RNG stuff. So if I store the seed and I replay that with the exact seed, then it will be fully deterministic. Great artwork. Cheers from Brazil. Thank you. I appreciate that. You definitely have more principled approach to these systems than I ever would. Yeah, I just, with the game being as complex as it is, like, I just need to be very careful not to break stuff. Also, I'm gonna go on a wild tangent here because I literally just saw something that I want to improve. So I'm gonna switch over to the master branch here and I'm gonna do that. So yeah, combat log is still my main area of focus. I've already been working on this for like, I don't know, probably already done like 15 or 20 hours of work on the combat log overhaul, and it's not even close to done. But we'll get there. So the one thing I wanted to do is add some color to these health globes, and I actually don't know. I think I'm going to have to redo this combat widget as well at some point. So there's that outer. Yeah, so let's see if I can remember where to find this. Actually, let's do this. You guys can actually see what's going on. Hopefully a little bit. Okay, let's see. Assets, UI. Health globe. Health globe.asprite. Here we go. Trying to decide how exactly I want this to work, but that might be a little bit too much. Well, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but that's all right. I don't know, let's just see if that's any good. We'll just see if that's any good. What about letting the player use the training dummy scene? That way we can test builds. Maybe. I never considered using branches in Godot. Does it handle merge conflicts well? Yeah, I mean, everything, all the resources in Godot are text files. So it handles, like, the merge conflicts are relatively easy to deal with. I mean, I mostly just try to make sure that whenever I'm working on stuff, like the branches are not touching anything else that other branches might be touching. I usually don't have more than like 1 or 2 feature branches active. Usually it's just 1. So it's pretty easy to just like stay narrowly focused on that feature and like not touch it at all on the master branch. Really? I have no clue if this is going to look good at all, but we'll see. I know in Unity it can be tricky because of how assets are serialized. Yeah. Third-party file picker, I thought we were on Windows 12 for a sec. Yeah, it's called File Pilot. It's really good. I like it a lot, but the problem is that it's like basically impossible to get this to be your default file explorer without doing registry edits / hacks. And I don't really want to do that. So, yeah. I think that's a good idea in theory. That probably looks a little bit better. feel like I could use some black there, but maybe not. Let's just see what this looks like instead. Like I said, this is a massive tangent, but whenever an idea comes to me for like a visual improvement, I like to usually jump on that if I can. On the topic of scope creep, have you thought about palette switching maybe through a full screen shader? Yeah, that's how I would do it. Oh, that looks kind of good actually. I think it adds a little bit more depth to the health globes. I may just remove these though. Oops. I might have discussed in the past, not sure. Yeah, I think I would do it that way. I would find a couple of palettes that I think work well as palettes for the game. Maybe I'd even take a stab at creating my own alternative palettes for the game. And then, yeah, I think what it would do is just a whole screen shader that just replaces each color. Dat Bubble, hello Monkey Software, welcome. Well, I mean, I think it's okay. Yeah, I think it looks a little bit better. Full screen shader could be a neat unlock. Probably want to show the final, like here's this giant combat log, right? So that would probably change to like the combat summary that I'm working on. Okay. Anyway, I think that's okay. The combat log is being completely redone, Monkey Software, so that's not going to be there anymore. Would be fun to enable custom user palettes, just supplying the game at 8x1 in a folder somewhere. Speaking of scope creep, it would be nice to have icons for the abilities to see them at a glance. I am going to do different icons based on what the type of ability is. So if it's an ability that can be replaced on the item, then it will be like the typical ability icon that you see. I'm going to do a different icon for innate abilities. There's already a different icon for corrupted abilities. There's a different icon for legendary abilities. And then I will probably also do a different icon for projected abilities. So the idea would be to make it easy to know at a glance, like which abilities are actually like natural to that item, so that you know which ones are going to be affected by alchemy. And you should also be able to tell at a glance like which ones are not ones that are typically modifiable by alchemy, which abilities are on the card that are coming from other cards as the result of projection or from an artifact, for example. So I am going to do that. I think that would help a lot in terms of readability. But in terms of like the nitty gritty, like this is a fire ability, so it has a fire icon, I'm probably not going to do that. Just as a summary, knowing if the item has a paralysis ability without needing scrolling. Yeah, I mean, I can figure out something for that. I don't know. I think part of the problem is, like, I was thinking about how I might do this. Reduce the ability count on items just generally across the board. I would like to experiment with that. I don't know exactly how I would do it, but I think it could be a more interesting experience if, for example, like instead of the skeleton dragon having like 12 abilities, whatever it is, like if the skeleton dragon just had like 6 abilities, and then the rest of the items like had either 1, 2, or 3 abilities. The problem with that though is then I don't have an easy way of like differentiating like 1 by 1 items from 1 by 2 items and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think I have a feeling that would be good for the game if I could just reduce the overall ability count and cause it to be a lot more focused. Not like the ability count in terms of like what's available in the game. I mean like reduce the number of abilities that items can have like naturally. But I really don't know how I would do that. So yeah, that's something that I want to think about too. Anyway, I'm not going to figure out a solution for that right now, but I mean, you know, it could be the case that if I change the ability scaling such that abilities they also scale with like how many cells are on the item, that could work as well. So I could reduce the absolute ability count on items and then make the ability or make the item size have an effect on how the abilities are scaled. That might work. So like a damage ability on a skeleton warrior, like the same damage ability on the skeleton warrior would be much stronger on like the skeleton dragon because the skeleton dragon takes up 9 slots, right? Then what I could do is I could create a more focused experience where like, you know, your 1 by 1 items have 1 ability slot, your 1 by 2 items have 2 ability slots, the 3 cell items and the 4 cell items maybe have 3 ability slots or something. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a solution in there. Anyway, like I said, I'm not going to figure that out now. But yes, I think the scrolling is a problem. Getting lost in the ability list is a problem. I think that's mostly just a problem of there being too many abilities on items, though. So yeah, anyway, I'll think about it. But that is going to be it for the stream today. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. You can wishlist Alchemortis on Steam. Again, the playtest is over now. You can no longer join the playtest. If you did join the playtest, you can still play the game for like a week or so before it becomes unplayable in your library. But I would appreciate if you gave it a wish list. That would be great. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. Ideally, the number of abilities should scale faster than the size. That's what happens currently. That's what happens currently. The problem is that if I do that scaling, then you end up with a skeleton dragon having a 12 ability slots. And that ends up being a little bit unwieldy. And 1 by 1s are not always better either because a larger item, for example, can do more with adjacency bonuses, right? So there's that factor to consider as well. But yeah, we'll think about it anyway. All right, thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate it. And I'll be back at it tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there, and bye-bye for now.